Thank you, Professor Sweet. I'd like to start my intervention now by taking a 10 seconds break and being aware of the person next to us, repeating in our hearts and in our mind this old ancient Ubuntu belief, I am because you are. Just in our hearts. I am because you are. Dear sisters and brothers of different faiths, the roles of women and religion in peace building have been subjects of extensive research in recent years. Scholarly evidence has underscored the importance of including women in peace processes to ensure the sustainability of peace in conflict-affected communities. There is also a rich body of literature on the role of religion in both perpetuating and transforming conflict, rooted in traditional norms and values of peace and reconciliation, which has come to be known as religious or faith-based peace building. However, not much has been written on the intersection of women, religion, and peace building, and how this plays out in specific conflict contexts. Plays out role in specific conflict contexts. In my presentation, I will try to point out some key elements which may bring some more light on this theme. Pope Francis states in Evangelii Gaudium that evangelization and interreligious dialogue, far from being opposed, support and nourish each other. Thus, he invites us to pay attention to the essential link between dialogue and evangelization, because from this profound identity, the fact that we are founded on a living faith in Christ, from this profound reality, our dialogue begins. True openness, he says, involves remaining firm in one's deepest convictions, clear and joyful in one's own identity, being at the same time open to understanding those of the other side, and knowing that dialogue can enrich each side. Dialogue is therefore not one-sided, but rather through mutual listening, both sides can be purified and enriched, because the dialogue is not a purely intellectual act, but rather a sacred act. Dialogue invites us to place ourselves before the other, seeing him or her as a gift of God and as someone who calls us and asks to be recognized, says Pope Francis. For this reason, he insists that true dialogue requires moments of silence in which to understand the extraordinary gift of God's presence in one's brother or sister. Furthermore, Pope notes that authentic dialogue also requires a capacity for compassion, which leads us to see others as brothers and sisters and to hear in and beyond their words and actions what their heart wishes to communicate. In this sense, dialogue requires of us a truly contemplative spirit of openness and receptivity to the other. Pope Francis notes, the theme of mercy is familiar to many religious and cultural traditions. To bend with compassionate love towards the weak and needy is part of the authentic spirit of religion. The very word mercy is a call to an open and compassionate heart. Why should women be involved in peace building? We may ask ourselves. Because women are half of every community and the tasks of peace building are so great, women and men must be partners in processes of peace building. Because women are the central caretakers of families in many cultures, everyone suffers when women are oppressed, victimized, and excluded from peace building. Their centrality to communal life makes their inclusion in peace building essential. Because women have the capacity for both violence and peace, women must be encouraged to use their gifts in peace building. Because women are excluded from public decision making, leadership, and educational opportunities in many communities around the world, it is important to create special programs to empower women to use their gifts in the tasks of peace building. Because women and men have different experiences of violence and peace, women must be allowed and encouraged to bring their unique insights and gifts to the process of peace building. Because violence against women is connected to other forms of violence, women need to be involved in peace building efforts that particularly focus on this form of violence. Because violence paralyzes. The search to heal is the search to feel again. Violence uproots and removes voices. The search to heal is the search to belong again, to be in touch with the sense of personhood, to be an author and not a victim. Violence damages the essence of humanity. The search to heal is the search to find a way through brokenness, to feel safe and part of a community of care. Violence destroys the capacity to feel and see beauty. The search to heal is the search to somehow recapture wonder and hope. Women of faith play a key role in their communities in supporting other women who face challenges. Their support may be discreet, unrecognized, and most likely informal, but it is nonetheless crucial to building more peaceful societies. But the perception of women as victims too often obscures their role as peacemakers in reconstruction and peace processes. Beyond the paradigm of victimhood, however, recent conflicts have shown that women play a multifaceted role as peacemakers during conflict, as mediators of dialogue between the conflicting parties, as sole breadwinners for their families in times of violent conflict, as preservers of a society's cultural values and norms, and as peacekeepers and envoys. Caution, therefore, needs to be exercised against the tendency to classify women as passive victims. Such a worldview leads to their exclusion from peace building, particularly from official negotiation processes. The contributions of women's groups to peace building have been significant, whether it is the example of Women in Peace Building Network in West Africa, which foregrounds the principle of positive peace in its work, the Women in Black, who provided the only sustained civil society opposition to the conflict in the former Yugoslavia in Serbia, or the example of Muslim, Hindu, and Sikh women crossing enemy lines in Kashmir in India to initiate projects on development, trauma healing, and reconciliation. In different regions of social conflict, women from hostile communities are transcending similar fault lines at times, representing the only group of civil society doing so. By providing opportunities for face-to-face interaction and dialogue in settings of hostility, women facilitate a much-needed humanization of perceived others. Furthermore, many of these initiatives engage in multi-track peace building as a means through which to attain a peace that is durable and inclusive. For instance, the women's groups working in the context of the peace between Pakistan and India ensure that they engage with government interlocutors as well as with a broad cross-section of civil society, including NGOs, business community, educators, grassroots leaders, and media in both countries. A recent UN policy document illustrates how the world and its worldwide effects on food, energy, and money are harming women and girls disproportionately, both inside Ukraine and abroad. The paper was released as the UN Security Council met to discuss on Ukraine. The global gender impacts of the Ukraine crisis on energy access and food security and nutrition policy paper outlines how the crisis is escalating already existing inequalities around the world, from the school-aged girls who are at risk of being forced to drop out to get married for dowry or bride price income for desperate families, to the physical and health challenges faced by the 265,000 pregnant Ukrainian women. Furthermore, the study illustrates significant rises in gender-based violence. Due to these deteriorating living conditions in conflict, disaster, and humanitarian context around the world, there is an increase in transactional sex for food and survival, sexual exploitation and trafficking, early child and forced marriage, and other issues. Those who experience various sorts of discrimination are the groups who pay the biggest price for violence, including that caused by human trafficking. In reality, ethnic minorities make up a large proportion of the victims of trafficking. Ethnic minorities, such as Latin American indigenous communities or the Roma communities in Europe, people who experience racial discrimination, women who constitute just over 70% of the identified victims, and children who account for about 30% of victims, members of underprivileged communities, or people who are displaced from their homes as a result of armed conflicts or environmental disasters, which are frequently brought on by human intervention. Domestic or foreign people are victims of human trafficking. I remember the story of one of the first victims of human trafficking I met many years ago, a young woman from Africa, fleeing domestic violence, a refugee whose state was not clear, belonging to a religious minority, raped several times on her journey to Europe, and abused in a detention center where she was waiting for her documents to be released. Like her, many trafficked persons suffer into their lives multiple discrimination and are wounded by different forms of violence, which make them vulnerable to exploitation and human trafficking. For her and for many others in similar or worse situation, a group of religious women decided to join forces and create in 2009 an international network under the biblical call Talitha Kum, which means little girl, arise. It is a network of spiritual cooperation for solidarity and action against human trafficking and exploitation. A network built on an inclusive leadership model which promotes and welcomes dialogue and collaboration with people from different religious traditions, organizations, government, intergovernmental, and NGOs. Currently, Talita Cum consists of 60 active networks in around 90 countries, which last year, for example, assisted 16,000 victims of human trafficking and reached more than 200,000 people in prevention activities. Religious congregations who are part of this network are 8% male congregation and 92% female. After he was elected Pope in March 2013, addressing human trafficking has been among the core issues of the pontificate of Pope Francis. In a speech addressed to a group of newly accredited ambassadors to the Holy See in December 2013, the Pope dedicated his entire talk to human trafficking because he said, "It is an issue that worries me very much and today is threatening people's dignity." And he mentioned that even those who have no religious beliefs should be concerned about victims of human trafficking out of pure compassion for their suffering, and should help work to free them and alleviate their wounds. In the encyclical Fratelli Tutti, launched in 2020, he mentions human trafficking or modern slavery 10 times. I will quote just a short paragraph from Fratelli Tutti. "Trafficking in persons and other contemporary forms of enslavement are a worldwide problem that needs to be taken seriously by humanity as a whole, since criminal organizations employ global networks to achieve their goals. Efforts to eliminate this phenomenon also demand a common and indeed a global effort on the part of various sectors of society." Talita Cum is a network in dialogue with different faiths. In Indonesia, Catholics and Muslims come together on February 8 to observe the International Day of Prayer and Awareness Against Human Trafficking. In Thailand, Catholic sisters and Buddhist nuns are working together against human trafficking. In the Middle East, Talita Cum has established the first inter-religious network bringing together Catholic, Orthodox, Muslim, and Druze women. When we encounter victims in vulnerable situations such as women and children, trafficked, or undocumented migrants, asylum seekers, people in detention, or children living on the streets, we work to build trust in order to respond to their urgent need while also respecting their respective religious belief, in the respect of the faith of each person. We meet as sisters and brothers, hosting them as our most welcome guests. Talita Cum has the insight, the know-how, the tenacity, and the experience to enable people forge new paths for cooperation and partnership in the fight against human trafficking, because this is the religious sisters and brothers' answer to this appeal. You are all cordially invited to join Talita Cum if you are interested. This is not advertisement, but to join in the belief that the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world is the acknowledgement of the inherent dignity of every member of the human family and their equal and unalienable rights. And this we can each be. I prepared now a short extract from a movie which was launched in 2019. It's called Wells of Hope, and it describes a part of the networking in Jordania.
La forza del dialogo, la forza...
Okay.
del lavorare insieme, la forza dell'incontro è qui così presente in Wells of Hope. Queste donne arabe coraggiose che hanno superato i loro limiti e si sono messe insieme, donne musulmane, donne cristiane, donne druse, insieme per salvare la vita a tante ragazze, ragazzine, donne, bambini che soffrono per la violenza silenziosa, che è la schiavitù del giorno d'oggi, che è la tratta.
نحن هون موجودين في مقام الخضر في مدينة ماحس، وهو وقف للمسيحيين والمسلمين معا، ومكان إقامة الصلاة في عيد القديس جورجيوس. دي سنة مريم العذراء للمسيحيين، وهذا الجزء من الآيات الموجودة من الإسلام من القرآن الكريم.
مرحبا، أنا اسمي إسراء، أنا من الأردن، ديانتي هي الإسلام.
مرحبا، أنا اسمي وفاء من الأردن وديانتي هي المسيحية.
نحن بنعيش في منطقتين متجاورتين، منطقتي هي تعيش فيها الأغلبية المسلمة تدعى ماحس،
وأنا منطقة مجاورة لماحس وهي رفحيس، وهي منطقة أغلبيتها مسيحيين.
موضوع التعايش الديني في الأردن هو موضوع كثير مهم. في عنا عدد من الديانات موجودين، وأكثرها المتعايشين هي ديانة الإسلام والمسيحية.
في كثير من الآيات في الإنجيل بتتحدث عن العمل الإنساني. السيد المسيح في الوعظة على الجبل حكى للناس: طوبى لصانعي السلام فإنهم أبناء الله يدعون.
الإسلام هو دين التسامح والسلام، ونحن نعتقد ونؤمن دائما بأن الجميع يجب أن يعيشون بسلام من أيام الرسول عليه الصلاة والسلام إلى يومنا الحاضر.
نحن من مئات السنين عايشين مع بعض إسلام ومسيحيين. لازم ننادي ليا
بس ما بحضرت طعم هناك.
طب هاتي نعملها. خلص كل أمي بس ما
لا تقيلة، لازم أقولها يكون شادي تعالي قرب الطنجرة. يلا
شوي.
خلص شوي كثير مش شو بسم الله.
مستعجلين. بسم الله.
أنا ما عمري جربت واحدة بس. اسمع من تحت.
على الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
أيوه. زبدة بصراحة.
لا.
فنانات ما شاء الله. ما شاء الله. أبسايد داون. ما شاء الله. أنا من القرص.
وقصة تزويج الفتيات القاصرات بأساس أنهم يتزوجوا ولكن هو يتم الإتجار بهم، سواء كان إتجار بأعضائهم أو تشغيلهم في موضوع الدعارة. وهاي القصص من أهم القصص اللي لمست ضميري، وأحسست أنه من الواجب علي الحديث عنها في أي مكان، والحديث عن اللي صنع القرار أن يتخذوا أهم الإجراءات القانونية للدفاع عن هؤلاء الفئات المهمشة. تجربتنا بشبكة والهوبس اللي هي شبكة الدفاع عن الضحايا الإتجار بالبشر كانت تجربة كثير غنية ومثمرة. أولها كان لي أن المشاركة في لبنان مع عدد من الراهبات وعدد من الناشطات النسويات في العالم، في الأردن وفلسطين ولبنان. كانت زميلتي وفاء وراهبات من سوريا ولبنان ومن الأردن. التجربة كانت كثير جديدة وغنية ومتنوعة. تعرفنا على عدد كبير من قضايا الإتجار بالبشر والعنف ضد النساء في هذا العالم. كثير نساء يتعرضن إلى العنف، وخاصة في المناطق التي تتعرض إلى أزمات، مخيمات اللاجئين والمناطق التي تتعرض إلى الحروب. وصدقا هي تجربة وجعتنا شوي كمان، خلتنا نحس قديش إحنا لازم نكون إنسانيين.
Okay, thank you.